Morning, everyone. This is Ranveer Puri. I'm director of the combined company, and I'm glad to do a presentation today on study and work placement opportunities in the UK, Ireland, and Canada. We'll just wait another minute until some other people do join us. Okay, I think it's in our interest to just get started, and we have other attendees who will be joining us in due course. Thank you for your patience. I have a presentation which I'll walk through and discuss the salient points of studying abroad. Just a quick note about us. We are a combined company. We've been in the international education business for the last 20 years. It is promoted by directors of leading international universities who have studied in the US, UK, and have work experience around the world. Just on a note, if people can't hear me, there is a chat box at the bottom. You can send me a chat note in case you're not able to hear me properly. Okay, I'll take that as the green signal to go ahead. We have a team of counselors and network of offices across India. We have counsel students for all leading countries in the UK, Ireland, Canada, USA, Australia. And we counsel and also represent universities across the world in their admissions and visas. So we have both counselors and university representatives. So for the day today, I have some salient points which I'd like to discuss and give you a broad overview about. Briefly, study abroad opportunities in the UK, Ireland, and Canada. Typically, the admission criteria for admission in these universities. What kind of opportunities there are for work placements in undergraduate and postgraduate degrees or placements, which is integrated with the program. The kind of scholarships which are available both from the universities and independent agencies. And of course, study work routes which are available in these countries after completing the program. And if you have any particular queries, how best to contact us to submit your inquiries, we'll also cover that. Just a brief snapshot. I mentioned that we have assisted students across the globe to study in the leading universities. This is just a snapshot of both state universities, Ivy League universities, Russell League, G8 in Australia, Irish universities, and universities selectively in France and Germany. So you can see there's a wide range of universities ranging from specialist business schools, pre-master's routes, Irish universities, Germany, Amsterdam in Europe, large US universities, Irish universities, and leading Canadian universities. Just to give you a backdrop, a lot of you may have questions, and our general guidance is how best to decide where to study. And that's a combination of various factors. First and foremost, which should be, what is your career objective? So what is it really that you're looking to do? Then decide what kind of subjects and modules in the syllabus that you're interested to do. I think that should be the main focus. Then, having shortlisted the courses, look at the universities, look at the location of these universities, in which countries they are. Depending on your budget and the extent of financial aid you may need or educational loan you're taking, you will have to consider the overall cost of study and living and maintenance, including insurance, and scholarships, if any, which are available from the university or private agencies, independent agencies. If your intention is to get some work experience, you need to consider any work integrated, which is with the course. And if intention is to also possibly look at permanent residency routes, look at what is the visa regime, and nowadays you need to keep a tag on what is the extent of visa regimes in different countries. So let's get started. Our first country overview is the United Kingdom. This is a country which we may all be very well familiar with. It's a country which has fairly decent sized population compared to Ireland and Canada, 67 odd million. Large, diverse GDP. In terms of the universities, most of them are government funded, and that means that the teaching quality, research excellence is guaranteed, as it is reviewed every 2 to 3 years, and there's a wide range of programs available. So the UK covers Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Right, so some of the points which you may or may not be aware of is there's 2 intakes typically in January and September. The bachelor's degrees range from 3 to 4 years, and typically a master's is 12 months, unless there's an integrated placement, which we'll talk about when it comes to 2 years. There are select scholarships which are available, both from the university, the British government, and independent agencies. As per visa rules, you're allowed to work part-time, 20 hours a week during term time and 40 hours during holidays. And there are opportunities to switch to Tier 2 skilled worker visas after completing your studies. So typically you get a visa which is for the duration of your program plus 4 to 6 months, and within the 4 to 6 months or prior to that, you need to or can apply to switch to your Tier 2 visa. So for the undergrad process, typically you need to apply to UCAS, which is the undergraduate course application system, and that's the preferred route. Postgraduate applications are typically done directly online and through university representatives like ourselves. You need to make sure you upload and submit all scanned original copies. Submit them online, including IELTS Academic in case you need to take it. At the admission time, these are things you can do later too. Depending on the offers you receive, you may be required to submit further scholarship applications. Assuming you get shortlisted, you need to choose one firm choice in your UCAS and insurance if you're still getting your results. Otherwise, in the postgraduate, once you get your and meet your condition, you can then apply for your visa by paying your deposit if necessary, and there's an insurance, immigration, health surcharge, and as per the visa rules, a medical test. So typical entry criteria is depending on the university. For class 12, typically 65 to 70% for foundation, and 70 to 80% for most other universities, depending on the program. Some may be higher, especially when they're in the STEM courses. By and large, postgraduate cutoffs are 50, but for the more competitive universities, you need to consider 50 to 55% in your undergrad. IELTS typically need a 6.5 overall with no less than 6 in each band. And standard documentation is your essays, references, CV in order to complete the application. If you're applying for medical, there's a cutoff by mid-November, and you need to do either the UK CAT or the BMAT, and if it's law, then the LNAT. As part of the visa process, you may be required to submit an ETAS, which is a clearance which typically takes 4 to 6 weeks. You need to keep that in account when you're applying for visa. So as we go through this, if you have any questions, please keep it on hold. You can put it on chat. You can raise your hand in the box, which is on your right side. It's against your name, and I can get back to you after you complete the presentation. So just to give you a selection of what kind of placements they are, typically the master's courses in the United Kingdom, they have a 1-year taught program followed by a 1-year work placement, which could be paid or in some cases unpaid. It's included in your visa. So for example, most of the internship programs are in, as you can see, in the business, the engineering, social science, finance related, some of them in the law areas and electrical engineering areas. That's also capitalizing on the extent of the industry there is in the UK in order to get that experience. So just to clarify, it's a 1-year taught master's plus a 1-year work internship. So it's a 2-year visa, 2 years plus typically 4 to 6 months, depending upon which university you're going to study at. So that puts it on par with most other universities in, say, the US, where you typically go for a 2-year, but that's mainly just the taught program. Here there's an internship included in the master's, and depending on the undergrad course that you have, there's a 1-year sandwich, which is a 1-year placement in your 3-year program, so it becomes a 4-year degree. So there's a wide range of scholarships which are available. I won't go into too much detail, but by and large, there are British Council grade scholarships, which tend to be £2,000 to £5,000, or in any case 10 to maybe 50%, in some cases 100% of your bachelor's or master's degree, which are on a competitive basis for Indian students. There are independent scholarships from the government, such as the Chevening Scholarship, Rhodes Scholarships, and the Commonwealth Scholarships for both masters and research programs. For the arts, the Charles Wallace India Trust Scholarships, which is for selected universities, and there are also other independent scholarships for PhD and research, such as Ratan Tata, Manmohan Singh for Oxford, Cambridge, and some in-like scholarships, which also typically you need to apply 1 year in advance to your program. So on to our next country, which is Ireland, a smaller country. I showed you the slide earlier, which shows that it's on and adjacent to Northern Ireland. It is the Republic of Ireland and shares a common border, but is distinct, separate country. It's a smaller country in terms of the number of colleges, but has some of the most reputed universities and colleges. And the industry per se in Ireland is especially strong in terms of computing, IT, pharma, engineering, BBPO industries, and finance and banking. And most of European headquarters of global MNCs are headquartered in Dublin for tax purposes. So it's a good place, and they've been fairly forthcoming in terms of international students in the last few years. So the process and the duration of the courses are largely similar. We have 3 years bachelor's degrees, 12 to 18 months masters. Typically need to go through the similar process. As per current visa rules, you need to pay a minimum of 50% of your tuition fee before you apply for a visa in principle, which is your AIP. There's certain other specifics, which is a police clearance and medical test, which is unique to Ireland. I'd just like to mention that when we assess students throughout the process. So in Ireland, there's again select scholarships, some of which are university specific. So the leading universities: University College Dublin, Trinity College Dublin, University College Cork, Galway, Maynooth. Depending on the discipline, there's a scholarship of between 3,000 to 10,000 euros. The tuition fees will come to earlier or later. I've got it on a common slide. There are some common Government of Ireland scholarships, which cover tuition up to 10,000 and the living expenses. And there are some independent scholarships, such as the centenary and other scholarships. It's a highly competitive process. There are scholarships available. You have to make sure you meet the entry criteria and apply in time with all documents, which typically also involve an interview. So now we come to Canada. Again, just in terms of a snapshot, it's slightly smaller in terms of population compared to the United Kingdom, much bigger than Ireland. In terms of its proximity to North America, the US, and having a common border, it's a politically and peaceful and seen as a safe country. Relatively lower tuition fees, certainly at the college level, not necessarily at the university level, and certainly attracting recent graduates for permanent residency and express entry for the jobs. So just a snapshot, there are about 150 community colleges, close to 100 universities. Master's courses are of two-year duration. Diplomas are 1 to 2 years, and diploma and advanced diploma typically of 1 to 2 years with a 4-year degree. So it similarly follows a US style system. Has some of the leading universities, it's about 3 of them ranked at the top 100 and at least 10 in the top 300, so highly reputed universities. And the colleges are typically vocational to academic programs, which are people who are looking for vocationally oriented courses, which offer either a co-op or an opportunity to work after 1 year study. Right, so they typically have intakes in September, Jan, and May, with September being the main one, and limited intakes in January and May. Just if you are interested, we would encourage you to contact us earlier. And typically, most of the applications, at least to the popular colleges, they get closed anytime between 3 to 6 months prior to the application. Typical entry criteria you need to be aware of is typically 16 years of education to the more prestigious universities. Typical cumulative GPA needs to be around 70%. In some cases, depending on the program, it could be about 65%, but typically the universities would look for about 70% cumulative GPAs, looking for the better students in their class. PG diploma is open typically for students with a 15 years education, so you're typically 2 + 3 years. And for bachelor's, typically 12 years full-time education from Indian ISC, ICSE, IB or A levels, with an equivalent of at least 60% plus. IELTS is mandatory when you apply, so it's something which you need to be aware of. When you apply, you need to have done the IELTS and meet the criteria. So Canada also offers an opportunity to work during the course, which is typically on campus, of up to 20 hours a week, at 40 hours during your regular holidays during your course. And there are opportunities for post-study work depending upon how long your course of study is. So typically a 1-year diploma would lead to a 1-year post-study work visa, and a 2 years study, which is typically a PG diploma or an advanced diploma, could lead up to 3 years of post-study work visa, provided you meet certain various criteria, which is having completed course at a designated learning institution, which is a university and college, having successfully passed it, met the criteria, and apply within 180 days of your graduation. There's typically no restrictions as of now. It's constantly evolving regime, and you should check, and you can contact us. So since last year, some of you may be aware of the SPP scheme, which is now streamlined for the Student Direct scheme, and these are for students in India, Vietnam, Philippines, but more so for Indian students, encouraging quality students who have got and met the IELTS requirement, and that does provide a faster visa processing time of 20 calendar days, so that's typically up to 3 to 4 weeks. We'd still encourage you to submit all the requisite documentation online or via paper. So in case there is some confusion as to whether you don't meet the HDFC criteria, you would still be required to submit the requisite financial documents in your visa, where the processing time could take 45 to 60 days. Just a snapshot of the visa process. It is quite tedious in terms of the documentation, but you do need to also have a GIC, which is investment certificate through designated banks in India, where you need to deposit Canadian 10,000 to cover your expenses for living. You need to have paid your tuition fee, having covered, and paid your medical examination at least 1 week prior to the submission of the visa application, and having got admission at a designated DLI. Again, just a quick snapshot. There are a lot of caveats in various scholarships which are available. Most of them are university specific, so if you are keen on certain universities, you should, and I would encourage you to contact us, having shortlisted the universities to see which ones you're interested in. Some of them are colleges, some of them are universities which you can look at. Again, offering competitive scholarships, but typically not more than 5 to 10,000 Canadian. So this is a sort of a cross-country comparison, which sometimes is useful, especially with those students who are trying to decide across various criteria as to, based on the academic and financial background, perhaps the age, perhaps backlogs or retakes that they've done, as to which are the issues that they could face, both from an admission point of view and a visa point of view. So just in terms of comparison, Canada typically has an undergraduate course of 4 years. UK is 3 years taught with a sandwich of 4 years. That means a 1-year placement. So you study for the first 2 years, third year placement in industry, and come back and complete your 4th year. Ireland is typically for a 3 years undergrad. I would just like to highlight Scotland, which is part of the UK. It's a 4-year undergrad. So in the UK, you might end up doing a 5-year. undergraduate degree. Typically, duration of the postgraduate programs is 1 to 2 years. Most UK programs are taught masters, which is 12 to 15 months, depending on the university. And if there is an integrated placement or work placement of typically between 6 months to 12 months, then it's a 1 to 2 year program. And your visa will be for that duration of your postgraduate program, plus at least 4 to 6 months, depending on the university you applied to. Ireland visa is typically for 1 year, after completion of which there is a current post-study work visa of up to 2 years. Certain eligibility criteria you need to be aware of. In the UK, I mentioned, depending on the universities, there's pilot programs of up to 6 months visa, after which you can switch to a tier 1 or tier 2 visa, which is skilled worker visa, entrepreneurship visa, or other work visas. For Canada, typically, in most cases, if you're going on a PG diploma, it could be 1 year or a 2 year for the postgraduate. Post-study work visa, as I mentioned earlier, is typically 1 to 3 years. The average cost is something which you need to be aware of. I've taken average because there can be a lot of variations depending on the universities you're considering. Your average cost is 12 to 22,000 pounds, which is typically almost 10 to 11 lakhs. 15,000 to 25,000 Canadian, 15 to 20. Living costs are typically almost similar, depending on the exchange rate, and PG costs largely similar. Canada can be slightly cheaper, especially for the 1 year PG diploma or diploma programs. Part-time is largely common for most visa regimes. There are certain standardized tests which you need to be aware of. Again, I've just given a broad brush. So for the UK, you typically need to do the IELTS academic, unless the higher education institution university has waived it, and I've mentioned that in the CAS. If you're doing the law or the medical, you have to have cleared the UK CAP, the BMAT, or the LNAT. And depending upon if it's a business school, you may have to have done the GRE or the GMAT. Similarly for Ireland, there's more flexibility. You could have done the IELTS, the TOEFL, or the PT equivalent to meet the requirements. And for Canada, you have to have, at the time of your application anyway, you have to have submitted the IELTS or TOEFL, without which you can't apply for a visa. And that's part of the SDS scheme, which I mentioned earlier. Depending on the university, you may have to have cleared a GMAT or a SAT, or the equivalent ACT, or the AP, in case you're studying in international school, or the Indian equivalent class 12 results. There's certain things which you need to be aware of. Each case is slightly unique, but wherever there's a gap or a backlog, you need to clarify. In Canada, they can be a little more strict depending on the number of backlogs you have. And that's something, if you can send us your details, you can have a look at. It pretty much covers what I had to say. If you do have inquiries, I would encourage you to go through our website, which is www.combinedco.com. We also have a mobile app on Android and iOS on the store, which you can download and get regular updates. By all means, you can contact us, but I would encourage you to email us your CV with your full details of your academics and any standardized tests and backlogs with grades that you have. So that would be the preferred way, so that at least we have your documents and are able to respond to you within a day. Otherwise, by all means, you can submit an inquiry. I can take you to our website to show how to do that. It's an inquire us, contact us button. And certainly in terms of the process, after submitting and getting in touch with us, we can assist you for your admission and guidance and visa process, which is really getting down to actually doing the applications, shortlisting the offers, and doing the visa. So just to give you a snapshot, we pretty much offer services 360 to assist you in, based on your profile, to help you, give you some career guidance on the courses, institutions, and countries you may be interested in, assist you in the application process, giving you some guidance as to the standardized tests that you may have to do, especially for the more competitive universities, or if you're looking at getting some scholarships. Some information and guidance on scholarship, which I mentioned earlier. We have assisted several students on scholarships from 50% to 100%, depending upon whether it's PhD or Masters, which are highly competitive. You need to apply 1 year in advance, but that should not be your preferred way of funding. There are other ways where we can assist you in education loans, which is where we work as a partner with HDFC Credila and other public sector undertakings to make sure that you meet the requirements for the education loan when you apply, either for pre-visa disbursement or post-visa disbursement, depending on the university and country you're applying to. So the pre-visa disbursement is when you have already taken the funds, dispersed the funds to your account, perhaps even made the tuition fee payment, and then applying for visa with the fee of or the receipt of your tuition fee. And the post-visa disbursement is when you have an education loan meeting the terms and conditions of the visa country you're applying to, which basically would say that the loan is in your name and you are the applicant, who, if there are any co-borrowers, and what are the terms and conditions of your loan. So we can typically help students to make sure that the visa, or rather the education loan, is in requirement with the visa process, where a lot of people get stuck because they feel that once they have done this, the rest seems to automatically follow. But the education loan is paramount with the visa process. We'll give you some guidance to both public university and private sector accommodation, and some guidance on creative purchase. We help get people together in different cities, whether you're in Chennai, Madurai, Maharashtra, Delhi. Just a quick snapshot, which I mentioned earlier. I've been in the International Education Council and Ministry representative for 20 years. We work with reputed universities, which are typically government funded, and private sector colleges, which are reputed and meet the criteria in their home countries. And as I mentioned earlier, we support you throughout the process. More specifically, in terms of the documentation, both academic, financial, and sponsors, because each country is slightly unique. In the UK, only parents or the applicant can be the sponsor, whereas in Ireland and Canada, you could have an aunt or relative So you need to take into account these factors. We help network you with alumni in those countries and perhaps in India as for networking opportunities. That's pretty much what I have to say right now. I can see there are a number of people who have raised their hands. I'm more than happy to take any questions and perhaps respond to them accordingly. I'll just ask Shubhi Raval and see if she can be online.